This is Christy from www.ShoutN2TheVoid.com, and you're listening to ShoutN2TheVoid Radio. Good evening, everyone. This is Christy, and I'm here with you tonight with the subject of interest is Nipsey Hussle, service, and purpose. So today was the public memorial service for rapper, philanthropist, entrepreneur, father, and the list goes on and on and on about who this wonderful young man was. The whole United States, at least, is very hurt, or at least majority of people are very hurt with the murder of this young man. And I think that what is so hurtful about the situation is that we'll never get to see all of the things that this person could have been. Hussle was only 33 years old at the time of his death, and we all feel deprived of watching him grow up more and really fully step into his purpose. But I don't think that it's a fair statement to say fully step into his purpose, because even at only 33 years old, this was a very actualized being. In psychology, there's a fellow named Maslow, and he has a hierarchy of needs. And in those hierarchy of needs, there are your basic needs like food, water, love, sex. And it's a triangle, and at the very tip of the triangle, once those very few basic needs are met, only 1% of the population gets to that tip of the triangle, according to Maslow. And that tip of the triangle is self-actualization. That's when you know who you are completely. You've completely found self-love. You've completely started a process, are walking inside of your actual purpose, and you just know who you are as an individual. And Nipsey seemed as though he was an actualized person. He knew exactly what he was, he knew exactly what he wanted, and his main goal, it seems as though, was to love and to be a help and a blessing to lots of people in this world. There are stories pouring in from absolutely everywhere about who this person was, how smart he was, how spiritual he was, how good of a father, how good of a provider, how good of just the person that Nipsey was. And we're all feeling the loss, just the extreme loss of not getting the opportunity to see what more he would have been. But I believe that everything happens according to God's plan, and when we leave this earth, it's simply because we've done everything that God has called us here to do, and it's absolutely time to go home. So as sad as it is for us, his death has also started a movement. And you guys, excuse me for my voice today. I'm from the South, as I said before. Everything is blooming. I mean, it's beautiful, but pollen and allergies just, that's all I'm going to say. But back to our topic is Nipsey. You know, we hate to have lost him, but at the same time, he was an actualized person, and his death is bringing about, I feel, a change in the hearts of many. So just to share a personal story, I already expressed in another video or podcast how I came to know who Nipsey Hussle was. I came to know him through Instagram, not his music, but through Instagram. And there was a whole video about him starting his own business and trying to lift other black people up in the community and make us, more woke to business ownership. And that's where I found out about him a couple of months before his passing. And just seeing him then, it really put like a fire inside of me, because I was already on a personal journey of, just thinking about African Americans being owners and African Americans stepping away from typical employment and employing ourselves. And so his words kind of already, like threw another coal in the fire that was already burning. But the day he actually passed, I was coming back home from spring break and a little vacation I had, and I heard about his passing, and I was floored because I couldn't believe it. But also I was inspired because of the person he was. He lived such a meaningful life at just 33 years old. And some people make it to 53, 93, 103, and they don't make the impact that Hussle was making on his community, on just especially African Americans on a grander scale. And I think that his death has fostered lots of change inside of people. And I feel like because he was walking so much inside of his personal purpose, that his death is actually beginning a movement. It's written somewhere. I can't quote to you who said it or where it came from, but it says that a prophet isn't valuable until they die. And I hate to say that, but there's a lot of truth to that statement. My grandfather, who's 91 years old, was around, and he's 91 years old and lived in Alabama his entire life. So he was around quite a bit for the era of Martin Luther King. And in the history books, Martin Luther King is just painted as this figure whom everyone loved and adored, and he was welcomed with open arms. But my grandfather revealed to me recently that people didn't like Martin Luther King, especially African American people didn't like Martin Luther King, because they felt almost threatened. They felt as though he was a troublemaker and all those kinds of things, because he was speaking such a radical statement about peace and not being discriminated against, that even certain churches would not allow, in Alabama at least, would not allow Martin Luther King to even come into their churches to preach or to speak. And after his death, that's when we get the Martin Luther King that everyone loves and everyone adores. And it's the same thing with Jesus. Throughout Jesus's life, people didn't, they weren't fond of Jesus, because he was, again, one of those radical people who was waking up all these, radical ideas, and nobody liked the guy. And then after he died and resurrected, we get the whole Christianity movement, and everybody mostly everybody loves Jesus. And I feel like that's the same thing with Nipsey Hussle. So many people are revealing that they did not know who he was in life, or at least didn't know his music in life as he was alive. But now that he has passed, there are so many people who feel inspired. And I think that's what it is about purpose. I think that's why God gives us purpose. When we're willing to completely commit to what we were called onto this earth for, when we totally sell out to whatever calling it is, we become an attractive force. But so I just kind of discussed Nipsey as a person, and I discussed his purpose. But I want to just end today speaking about service. So I just listened to a sermon by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. entitled "The Drum Major Instinct." And the sermon was about how people have a natural instinct to be in the forefront of life. We want to be seen, we want to be visible, and we want adulation for the things that we do. And he went on to discuss Jesus And two of the disciples asked that when Jesus came into his kingdom, could they sit on his left and right hand side? And Jesus kind of straight up told them that he wasn't in control of that, but if they wanted to have a place in this earth, they had to serve. They had to be like him and be a servant. And I find that Nipsey Hussle's greatest legacy was that he was a servant. He was a brilliant guy. He could have just rapped and been done with it. He could have just amassed wealth, ran off in the sunset with his beautiful girlfriend and his beautiful children, and, amassed all these cars and houses, and that would have just been fine. Lots of people do it, But he shared himself with so many people, so many causes. I just saw a video about him where he had a store on Crenshaw, I think, called The Marathon. And his store, he employed young African American guys who are inside of gangs so that they would have an outlet. And that's so beautiful to me. That is so absolutely beautiful to me, because Nipsey was about being a service to others. And I feel like our greatest legacy in this earth, we could live our entire lives and we can marry and have beautiful babies and a beautiful house on a beautiful hill and watch those kids grow up and send them off to college and watch them do the same in their lives. But what is your life without purpose? And more than anything, what is your life without service to others? I've been thinking of myself, and I think that my legacy or my life will be in vain if I do not serve. And I think that Nipsey's life and death is a message to all of us to be of service. Don't be selfish. We're so selfish. We live in selfie society, and I admit to it. I'm guilty as everyone. I'm not perfect. We want to take a good selfie and throw on a great filter and get all the likes and the comments in the world. But are we willing to step outside of that bracket and become individuals who are willing to serve? The night before Jesus' death, he took off his robe, he put on a towel, he got on his knees, and he washed the feet of his disciples. And that's love. He gave them that final example of love and service right before he did the ultimate act of love and service. And that was laying down his life for his friends, that he said they were his friends. And Nipsey, in a way, laid down his life. We cannot compare him to Jesus. He's not Jesus. But he laid down his life in service. And Martin Luther King laid down his life in service. And so many, the greatest people in this world lay down their lives for service. They put the me behind and they join in with the we. So this is what was on my mind tonight. I hope that it puts a thought in your head and it makes you consider being a servant. Get out of that mindset of being selfish. Get out of selfie culture and be a servant. I love you all. Thank you so much for listening. Shout into the void.